We're in the information age, and really what that means, it's oversaturated, like podcasts and the rap scene. It's confusing. Whether you go on live or you zoom in, you ain't on the same page, so you read what the room thinks. The room thinks too many words, and every word is personal. When it's in type, it's even worse. If you misunderstood, it's just how it works. So I'm a hypocrite just like the rest of the earth. And racists think you hate them, so they gotta hate you first. Miscegenation is a crime, the melting pot is a urn. They want us normal and ignorable, killing to burn. Sexism isn't a two-way street. Listen to her, and slut ain't got no use as an excuse for a slur. Welcome to the Museum of Dead Words. I'm your tour guide, Dyalekt, alongside Pamela Capella, Kristen Krause, and J. Scoville, and today's guest is Sagani Kushner. Yes, really? Thank you for sharing. As you guys know, the original language is rhythm, so I'm sure you get them. We spent the last few years pouring through conversations online to find words that kill discussions and ruin discourse. We dub these words dead and have been infiltrating art galleries, co-working spaces, cafes, even MozFest to share how these words died and why that matters. In the online series, we'll be spending a week with each word with Blueprints of Progress on Tuesdays, that's today, where we get deep into how a word dies and why that matters. And on Thursdays in the main event, which is a collaboration with artists from around the world to share their experiences with these words. If you know a word or a phrase that has died or may be in danger, please share in the chat, add to the dead word bucket on museumofdeadwords.com, or even DM me. If you need to know why, ask the little guy. A little about the museum. We opened when your mouths did, and thanks to the generous contribution of millions of donors like you, we've been able to identify and catalog a growing list of words that have fallen into disuse. You know, in the English language, it's kind of hard to tell when a word has stopped working. Being English, these words tend to colonize conversations and then just sort of sit there, festering, letting tone and context do all the work. Sometimes these words die, and it takes generations for anybody to notice. This is when words get dangerous, as words only become weapons when they cease to function as tools, and the sharpness of their wit grows in direct proportion to the dulling of their meaning. You know, some words seem like they were born weapons, as they only exist to poke holes in an image, not to construct a new one. Words like that tends to beg the question, why does this word exist at all? Slurs, as they're often called, usually exist to set the hierarchy, embarrass, and control. Our next word leans heavily on the control aspect. The word slut, noun, born around 1400, circa 1402-ish, and died around 2011. A dirty, slovenly, or untidy woman. You can find it as early in print as Chaucer's Canterbury Tales in the prologue to the Canon's Yeoman's Tale. Why is thy lord so sluttish? It was being used to refer to a man's untidy appearance, why our party place today is a little bit of a mess. Thank you for helping keep it together like that. Sloppy, also slovenly. What's interesting is that the dirtiness was always really associated with loose morals. That was kind of from jump a tertiary definition. Makes a little bit of sense. We've talked a lot when we spoke about normal, and even when we were speaking about miscegenation and racism. Dirty is not only associated with darkness, but it's also associated with being untidy. And untidy means that everything's not in its place. If everything's not in its place, it doesn't have symmetry. You can't trust it. A lot of people feel better and healthier when they clean up their room, when they get everything together, when they know that everything's where it needs to go. Yes, thank you. And Z for when we get to the end of the road. So it's always had an association that had something to do with being dirty and something with loose morals. You know, and symmetry is such an important thing because like with beauty and like with rhyme, it has so much to do with how much we trust or how much we hate this particular person or group of people. In Shakespeare's As You Like It, there was the quote where Touchstone said, "Truly, and to cast away honesty upon a foul slut were to put good meat into an unclean dish. Audrey said, I am not a slut, though I thank the gods I am foul. Now, I probably should feel weird about reciting those lines in front of my kid, but there wasn't actually anything sexual meant about those lines, at least not about the putting good meat into an unclean dish. That's us putting our 20th century ideas on it. It's had so many different meanings over the years. It really bounced around. Here's an interesting quote in mid-17th century from diarist Samuel Pepys. Our little girl Susan is a most admirable slut and pleases us mightily. In England and Ireland, sluts were known as rags that were dipped in lard and used in place of candles. You would light up a slut so you could see. Also, going up into, I think, around the 19th century, a slut was a female dog. A slut has been known as an ill-shaped person or a tired, rambling, or shambling fellow. During all this time, it has been grammatically correct in all of the meanings, the dirty ones, the clumsy ones, the lazy ones, the sexual ones, the moralistic ones. It's been grammatically correct to refer to a slut as any gender, as a man. Just been more likely to be about women. And the word slut really turned a corner and started on a path that was going to lead to its eventual downfall when it began to be more commonly associated with sex. By the 20th century, a slut was known as a woman of loose morals, or as some has defined it, a woman with the morals of a man. I'm going to pull it back a little bit. Around circa 1450, there was a meaning that really went up to about the 18th century, referring to a slut as a kitchen maid. And that makes me think about the images we have of women. When you think of your slutty Halloween costumes, you have your maid costumes, your nurses, your babysitters, your teachers, waitresses, secretaries, all that are service positions. Sort of encouraging the idea that the only reason a woman gets a job is to be near a man. And when it comes to women and jobs and sex and sluts, the specter of prostitution is always brought up. Funny enough, another meaning related to slut, there was a word in Middle English, slore, that had a sexual quality to it that was revived in the 1990s as a mix between a slut and a whore. There's this idea that a slut does it for free and a hoe is a business person, or a whore is a business person, or a prostitute is a business person. And while it may be morally reprehensible to sell your body, that's a whole nother discussion we need to get into, whether about prostitution, about being a whore, that is seen as something you did because you have to do. Being a slut, liking it, wanting to, is a perversion. And that brings up the delusion that we've created that makes it okay to have these excuses. You see, a woman's not supposed to be easy. And if they are either a nympho or a stupid. You see, a slut is considered a bad person, and that's a slur because she can't control her primal urges. And as usual, when it comes to these matters, when we talk about women and men, we're talking about projection. Because a lot of times, as we talk about these service industries, maids, nurses, babysitters, teachers, waitresses, secretaries, these are also the industries where women have high rates of being harassed and reporting being harassed and not being believed when they report being harassed. It's not that different from way back in the day where someone was found cheating on their wife and decided that they were going to use the defense of it was witchcraft. And these witches created an incantation that was going to get me up out my drawers. That's the thing about magic. You always got to spell out those words. She was asking for it. She made me do it. All these terms synonymous with things like, I won't respect somebody who don't respect themselves, which is ill. A lot of people have said that. I've said that. I've probably said that about women, even though when you break the sentence down, it's really wild. Someone who doesn't respect themselves is in definite need of respect for them to get to the point that respect themselves. It's kind of like the whole, I can't get a job without experience, and I can't get experience without getting a job. And that's if we're being very generous about our definition. The thing about this projection and these excuses that are made is it paints a very clear picture The interesting thing about slut is when it gained the singular definition that was related to sexuality, it did paint a very clear picture of women. And the picture that it paints is one, that it's a woman that is confused, emotional person. Two, that this woman is dirty, poor, desperate, crazy, dangerous. Three, that this person, because they are aggressive, because they are dangerous, is ugly, undesirable, untrustworthy, and possibly villainous. They are promiscuous, once again making them undesirable and devaluing who they are. They show too much skin. They wear tight clothes. These are forms of nonverbal consent. And these forms of nonverbal consent, they make it okay. They again give us an excuse. Because again, this is about the illusion of the idea that sex and sexuality and the naturalness of between women and men, it's a game where men use their wits to trick and convince women, and any deviation is perversion. The idea that studies have shown that large-breasted women are seen as more promiscuous in their spaces of work, that they are seen as more untrustworthy, more likely to cheat, more likely to be stupid in schools. Kids, when they are young, as 12 and 13 years old, are seen as more dangerous just because they have more revealable body parts, even if they're actually covering them up. If they are shown to show any amount of skin, they are acting inappropriately. I mean, honestly, I remember playing a video game with my male cousins. They were about 10 years old, and it's one of those fighting video games. We're not going to call it out because it ain't necessary to go all there, but some of the female characters were very busty and had breasts out there with all sorts of video game physics, not natural at all, as we talk about natural state of things. And the boys were really weird and uncomfortable playing it in front of their big cousin. And I understand, like, that makes sense, right? You're playing this video game, sexual stuff comes up. And I asked them what the problem was, and they said, these women are dressed inappropriately. I don't like them. What they're doing is inappropriate. Again, making excuses to make it easy for us to blame the women. And the thing about it is, women have been really right about this for a very long time. Yes, they have. You got to tell the kid this, because if we don't tell our young men this, then they ain't going to know nothing. But women have been pretty smart and have been sidestepping these delusions for pretty much a century and change. And it came to a head in 2011 when they had the Slut Walk in Toronto. This was a place where people decided that they were going to reclaim the word. You may famously know Amber Rose was being one of the big celebrities making the major push and being a part of the Slut Walk, putting all that together, where these women said that they'd had enough with these distinctions, with these ideas, with the double standards, and with the delusion that was created. And they were going to take back not only the word, but the idea behind it. And one of the interesting things about it is that folks were then called out for being inappropriate themselves, for not dressing as the way they should, for not dressing in the way they wish they would. And what's really interesting is it simply proves the double standard that existed there. You know, women wearing less clothing, there's a place where people say, I don't respect that. And I've seen people in job interviews saying that if you wear less clothing, women, people won't respect you. And I also remember going to middle school and seeing young ladies with a ruler by their knee where they were checked. And if it was, I forget, it was 1 inch or 2 inches or whatever place it was supposed to be above the knee, if they didn't fit that particular standard, then it didn't work. And these people weren't worthy of respect. And there was an excuse to treat them poorly. After the Slut Walk, I noted that a lot of women kind of made their choices with the word, whether or not they would continue to use it and feel empowered by it, or whether they would let it go. Interestingly enough, it was kind of overtaken by other words. But before that, I get into that, I want to peel it back a little bit and bring up Leora Tenenbaum, who wrote a book around that same time, I Am Not a Slut, Such Shaming in the Age of the Internet. And I wanted to bring up a quote that she wanted to say about why she decided to let go of the word. She said, I'm not trying to censor any language, but at the same time, I'm concerned. I look around a campus, and every single day we have a new report of an act of sexual assault on a college campus, and that gives me pause. The fact is that most people don't use words like slut and hoe the way that people in feminist in-groups use it. So I'm asking people to think about what these words mean and how they can be used to shame and or harm other people. And that's kind of been the frame of it, is can the words be used to shame? Can the words be used to harm? And can they then be used to uplift? And as folks have been thinking about and trying to reclaim it, it sort of got overtaken by another word that got a lot of popularity because its relationship with people who empowered themselves and who were in a fun, fashiony industry, fashion itself. And that word is hoe. With the simple changing of the spelling, hoe went from being a colloquial word for a prostitute, oftentimes a Black or Latino urbanized city prostitute, to something couture and high fashion and empowered. And then people started using hoe as a verb, saying this could be part of my whole phase. And people were talking about their whole summer. And people were talking about being grown and done with their whole phase of their life so they could have one of their own. And that's where a word stomped out other words that became less useful and started to move on its own. Now, if you want to know more about the etymology of the word slut, where it's gone and what's overtaken it, we're going to be playing a little bit of a game on Thursday with our guest, Stevie from Ulari. So we'll check you next time with the Museum of Dead Words. Thanks for listening. Peace, y'all.